Let's get into my 2024 Pokemon Vancouver Regional recap. Since I have to keep you guys waiting for the regional vlog, because that's going to take some time to edit, I want to go over how much fun this past weekend was, and I want to give a huge shout out to everybody who came up to me, showed love. It was such a fun weekend, seeing so many familiar faces. Literally every single time I sat down at a table within the 5-person radius around me, there was at least one person from my locals or a subscriber. So it just felt very comfy, you could say. It felt very homey. It was really nice to see everybody's bright faces and smiles. Now, on a sadder note, as some of you guys know if you follow me on social media, it's at SneakerTalkCA on X or SneakerTalkCA on Instagram for my personal, or TCG for my Pokemon one. Or if you watched my recent Pokemon Temporal Forces booster box opening, you would know that my dog Misty passed away literally last Tuesday, 1 week ago. So if you saw me with my little Squirtle right here, this was her Squirtle. Squirtle is now being promoted as my elite employee, you could say. It's now my new favorite Pokemon, although Squirtle's not new by any means. So I appreciate all of the condolences, the well wishes, and the positive vibes a lot of you guys sent me. There were multiple times where I had near breakdowns, or I did actually start tearing up, just because it was a very emotional weekend. So shout out to all the homies who really were there for me. These style of videos, these tournament recaps, are pretty popular amongst the Pokemon community, and I was watching Rahul Reddy's yesterday on the plane ride home, I believe, so I want to give a huge shout out to Rahul. If you want to check out his channel, I'll leave it linked down below. I highly recommend you check it out. He was rank 1, I believe, in North America for a little bit during the season, and he's definitely one of the best players in the game. And he was just going there for fun, playing Shen Pao EX with no practice, because he was preparing for EUIC. So if you want to check out his video, I'll leave it linked down below. This tournament was by far the best performance I've ever had at a major event. Although I didn't qualify for day 2 like I did in Pittsburgh, I only lost 1 match in total, and I ended up playing in the day 2 cup as well with the exact same 60 card list, because I was like, hey, let's just run it back. I played great the other day, and I ended up going 5-2 at the Pokemon Cup, with my 2 losses being to a local player, Vince Tim, in round 1 playing Charizard, and then I lost to a Golden Go player who ended up getting first seed going into Top Cut as well. Spoiler alert, this will maybe spoil the Vancouver Regionals vlog when I post it, but you probably know what happened before it even goes up, because you're watching, or you probably follow me on social media, so you saw how I was performing with my overall ranking. For now, I'll save my final placement and stuff for the very end of the video, so this one at least doesn't get spoiled if you don't know how I did yet. Here's the list I played for Vancouver. So I had 2 major objectives going into this tournament. The first one being to make top 32, and the second one was to win 5 games with Ampharos EX. Ampharos was fantastic. Ampharos was the MVP of the deck this weekend, and it is seen right away with round number 1. So round number 1, we played against Arceus Regidrago V-Star. Yes, you heard that right. Arceus Regidrago V-Star. This deck has a Pokemon core called Noivern EX, which, if I was just a regular Miraidon player, if that Noivern EX attack Covert Flight gets in there and onto the board from their Regidrago, I straight up lose the match. I popped off. We 2-0'd the Arceus Regidrago V-Star player, and you can probably guess where I'm going with this. Ampharos EX was the clutch MVP card in this matchup, which felt amazing, and the look on my opponent's face when I played Ampharos was fantastic. Every single time I showed Ampharos, somebody had to read it, because they had no idea what it did at all. Next up, going into round number 2, we played against Roaring Moon EX. Roaring Moon EX is a slightly favored matchup for Miraidon, particularly my version, in my opinion, because we have cards in the deck like Zeraora, which a lot of Miraidon players don't play. All you have to do is use 1 energy on Zeraora to swing for 30 onto their Roaring Moon that Frenzy gouged you, and you get those 2 prizes back for pretty much free, because you can tandem unit your Zeraora onto the bench. And of course, we do play Path of the Peak, so Path of the Peak is really good in the Roaring Moon matchup if they're not able to bump that stadium. I lost the first game here, and that's because I went Mew EX, attach, pass. They got to go second, and I got turn 1 donked. So yeah, that happened. Game number 2, the Roaring Moon player ended up bricking kind of just as bad as I did, and I like turn 1 or turn 2 dunked them as well. And then going on to game number 3, I think it was pretty close, but I believe my Ampharos EX closed it out in the end. So that's 2 games in a row where Ampharos EX won me the match. Feels pretty good, man. Going on to round number 3. Round number 3 is probably one of the best players I've played against at a regional event. You might have heard the name if you're a fan of Shen Pao. My opponent was Grant Shen. Grant Shen, aka the CEO of Shen Pao. Guess what deck he was on? Not Shen Pao. He was playing Charizard EX. Basically how the Charizard matchup goes is for the 2 out of 3 matchup, you need their Charizard deck to at least brick 1 game. At least one of the 3 to be able to close out all 3. Grant Shen ended up bricking round 1 and he attacked with Jirachi. He got to go second. He went attached to the Jirachi and then attack with it. And then it was my turn and I got the turn 1 or turn 2 donk, you could say. Game number 2 was a little closer, well, a lot closer compared to game number 1. Game 1, I just ran away with it. Game 2, I had a pretty strong start, but unfortunately, I believe I prized my my path to the peak. I did a really dumb attack where I KO'd a Pidgey when I should have just kept on using Fast Charge, because the second you KO a Pidgey, well, you're up a prize. And guess what? Counter Catcher is a very good card. So yeah, they just counter captured my Raichu and I got cooked. And then game number 3, Grant actually bricked again. This brick was not as horrible as the first time around. I kept killing his Charmanders when they kept spawning in. But unfortunately, by the very end of the game, I wasn't able to close out. I made some really dumb misplays too that Grant is very aware of. I think he talked about it to some of the homies where I just made some dumb questionable plays. If there was a way I could have had game, I threw that option away because of the misplays I was making. So we ended up tying. It was a natural tie. And as a Miraidon player, going into a Charizard at a major event or just at any time, we take those ties. A tie feels almost like a win because of how skewed the matchup is for Charizard versus Miraidon. I personally think the Charizard matchup versus Miraidon is about like 90-10. I think Charizard wins it about 90% of the time. It's not impossible, especially for my deck since I do have Path to the Peak in there as well. But Turbo Miraidon gets pooped on by Charizard. Going into round number 4, we played against one of my friends from locals, my roommate as well from Orlando Regionals, Michael Battaglia. He was a Gardevoir player and the only Gardevoir player I saw the entire day. I was expecting a lot of Gardevoir players for this regionals. I was expecting a lot of top players to play Gardevoir, and that was accurate. I was right about that. But of course, because in day 1, there's so many players involved that the chances of you hitting, you know, your ideal matchup, a very populated matchup again and again and again, it doesn't really matter. It's pretty random. It really is. My friend Vincent, who used to play Miraidon, switched to Roaring Moon, and then he played 5 Gardevoirs. So Vincent, hate to say it, buddy, but that's what you get for switching off Miraidon. But anyways, let's get back to the matchup. My homie Michael, he started Zacian V, attach, Roar the Sword, and then on my turn, I did my thing, and I used Proton Blaster, and I turned 1 KO to Zacian V. Going into game 2, he was having a, I want to say, not as bricky game, but still a kind of a bricky game. And we cleaned up really quickly. So I was like, yo, you wanna just go get lunch after we played our game? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's just go get some McDonald's. So 2-0 in that match, making our record 3-0-1. And I'm feeling really good at this point. I'm like, hey, if I keep this up, maybe I can play on stream. Again, that was one of my goals, to play on stream so I could bring Misty Squirtle and have it on the desk. You'll probably always see me with Misty Squirtle now. When I'm at majors, I'm just always gonna have it in my backpack. I'm always gonna have it with me. So if I do end up on stream, I do get to showcase it. But unfortunately for round number 5, things get a little shaky. So round number 5, we played against another Roaring Moon EX, and this time around, it was another horrible repeat. As you guys know, Turbo Miraidon will typically play 2 Mew EXs, so there's a decent chance you start with the Mew EX. I only have 1 Mew EX, and just like the first Roaring Moon, I also started with Mew EX in the active, and I attached, and I passed. Luckily enough for me, my opponent was not able to pull off the turn 1 donk. They were able to load up a Roaring Moon on the bench with 3 energies, but they didn't have a switch out available. Yeah, it went from going horrible to holy cow, I survived the turn 1 donk with just a lone Mew EX. And now we get to play the game, and I had this miraculous comeback, and I won the first game, which is sick. It was so cool. Game number 2, I had Lumineon in hand. I had Raihan in deck. I had 3 bosses orders in my discard pile. And I had Ampharos EX in hand. I turned off my brain because I'm not used to playing with Raihan in my deck. I just completely forgot it was an option. I even remember looking at it, but I'm like, it's not boss. I wish I had a boss so I could just swing for 220 onto like the Galarian Moltres V on the bench or something like that. However, I played Ultra Ball and I discard the Lumineon in my hand, which I could have just benched to grab Raihan, and I would have been able to attach per turn, Dynamotor, Raihan, evolve my Ampharos, or evolve my Flappy into Ampharos EX, retreat and bring Ampharos into the active, and swing into Roaring Moon EX for 240 for game, because I just had the last 2 prizes remaining. I tunnel visioned, and I made a dumb misplay, and my opponent capitalized on that, tying up the series 1-1. And then going into game number 3, we only had 5 minutes left, and it just ended up becoming a natural tie. We went into overtime, and we had 4 prizes left each, and there was no way for us to, for either of us to take the 4 prizes left remaining. So we were like, all right, well, I guess it's a tie. Shook hands, and yeah, my opponent was really friendly. Probably one of the funnest matches. He was very animated. I was very friendly too. I'm usually a very friendly, talkative person, but I know at majors not everybody likes to be friendly and talkative, so I'll usually mirror the energy that my opponent is giving me. If they're giving me super serious vibes, then I'll go kind of more super serious and not talk much. But if my opponent is friendly, then I'll be extra friendly as well, because I'm just a friendly Canadian player, you feel me? Current record is now 3 wins, 0 losses, and 2 ties. We're going into round number 6. And round number 6 was a deck I was not anticipating to see at all. I did 0 playtesting against it, and that is Zorobox. If you don't know what Zorobox does, you probably don't watch Little Dark Fury. It's one of his favorite decks, so shout out to Matt. And basically, it's a deck that revolves around using Zoroark, a stage 1 Pokemon, and it's kind of like Ditto in a sense, where your whole premise of the deck, it's kind of like a counter box. You use Pokemon like Kirlia. You use their ability Refinement to discard your cards in your hand to draw more cards, and the cards you're discarding are going to be your future attackers. The Zoroark transforms into a stage 1 from your discard pile, and in this matchup, the bane of my existence as a Miraidon player is Kleavor. Kleavor can basically one-shot my entire deck because it hits me for weakness on like all my Pokemon, and then there's another Pokemon, I think it's like Appleton, or one of those Apple Dragon Pokemon, which also does like 50 damage for 1 energy for each ability I have on my side of the field. So there are ways I can play around that, because you can play Path to turn off your abilities, but then the Kleavor, the only way to play around it is to, well, you really can't. It one-shots everything. If you have a full bench, it swings for 360 damage for weakness onto lightning type Pokemon. Game number 1 was super close. I was able to get lucky in a sense because a lot of these decks only play one-offs of each of their attackers, because that's what you typically will do. And he prized his Kleavor the entire game 1. So very close game, but I won because I used Ampia very much, a whole bunch, and they prized their Kleavor, meaning their best attacker in the matchup is not there. Game number 2 was a different story. They didn't prize their Kleavor. It was a very long and scary game. However, if you play around the damage output of Kleavor, it's 10 damage plus 30 for each benched Pokemon. Guess what Pokemon has 330 HP? You guessed right, Ampharos EX, the Thick Legend. And so their maximum damage output, I believe, becomes 300. So they're 30 HP short, meaning Ampharos EX gets to take a big 300 damage hit and live to tell the tale and take 2 prizes when it swings again into another Pokemon. And that's what I did. Ampharos, the goat, or the sheep in this case. So very surprisingly, against all odds, we beat one of the hardest matchups. I'd say it's like a 80-20, 85-15 maybe in favor of the Zorobox player. But we beat the Zorobox player 2-0. So our record going into round number 7 is 4 wins, 0 losses, and 2 ties. On to round number 7, we played against Lost Giratina. Now, Lost Giratina is a pretty close matchup. It's pretty much a 50-50, I want to say, unless the Giratina player is able to path the Miraidon player turn 1. If the Giratina player is not able to path us on their turn 1 going first, then we do get the setup and we do get to play the game. The Giratina player chose to go second because you're typically going to blind go second as the Tina player. And I think they just chose second for the game that I beat them in as well. So they won the coin toss. I pretty much like lost all my coin tosses throughout the entire weekend. Game number 1, I honestly forget how it kind of went. I think it was close. But yeah, I really just completely forget how it went down. But I ended up losing. And then game number 2, I chose to go second, which is very scary, again, of course, because a major lose condition is if your opponent can path you turn 1. And I was able to, I believe, just amp you very much 3 times in a row, or amp, and then boss Photon Blaster a Giratina V on the bench. Going into the last game, I was scared. I know that we had literally 10 minutes left. My dad just sneezed in the background. I knew we had 10 minutes left for game 3. I know that it's not impossible to win in 10 minutes against Giratina. However, if Giratina players play slow enough, or if they want to slow play, they're very easily able to force a tie. It's not hard to force a tie if you're a Giratina player or a Gardevoir player. Of course, you guys know people like to run up the clock. That's a common theme for those 2 decks in particular, which is why I hate Gardevoir players a lot. My opponent played at a great pace, a pace that I really just could not complain about. I didn't want to rush him. He knew what was at stake. I knew what was at stake, and I can't be mad at him. He didn't. I can say he didn't slow play me out of a tie. But unfortunately, at the very end of the game, I just wasn't able to take the last prizes I needed. They were having a bricky game, which is exactly what I needed them to do in order to close out as quick as I could. By the very end of the game, they still had all 6 prizes left, and I could just boss and kill 1 Pokemon. Leaving me with 1 prize card left. So I finished the game with 1 prize card. They had all 6, but I just wasn't able to get 1 more attack off in time after time, because my last turn of attacking puts me at the last prize card I need. So I guess I really like those matchups are so close. Like Lost Key Night matches, they typically go pretty long. And yeah, who knows? If I play a little too fast, then maybe I just lose, right? So it's like you have to try and find that balance between playing fast but not misplaying, but also you can't just like you can't throw your games away either. That's what I'm trying to say. So that was a painful tie. That was a natural tie, but it was a tie where it's like I absolutely win if I just get 1 more turn to attack. So it didn't feel good tying that one, but I looked back and I was like, you know what? That's more of a natural tie. I pretty much had game available against the Roaring Moon player, and I deserved that tie because I had the game and I threw it away. So that eased the pain of tying that one. But that meant that going into round number 8, there was a lot more pressure, a lot more on the line. So going into round number 8, we are at 4 wins, 0 losses, and 3 ties. And round number 8, I knew that going into this, all I have to do is beat them, and I could ID the last game, intentionally draw to get into day 2. So there was a lot of pressure on this one, and I knew my opponent would also feel the same pressure as well. And my opponent was a local friend in the scene, Julian. That was a very high tension, stressful game. We played the full game into overtime. I lost the very first game. I forget what happened. It was kind of a blurish. And then game number 2, he had kind of a brickier start, and I won that. And then game number 3, it came down to the wire. I almost lost because of a misplay. I just forgot to Dynamotor for a turn. I was so like, I gotta go, get my attacks off quick so we can finish the game. I was attacking so quick, I forgot to Dynamotor. I got Iono'd to, I believe, 1 or something like that. And or Iono to 2 or Rock Standard, something like that, and all I needed basically was energy for game, and that's what happened. So I got the energy off the top deck, and I had game if he didn't Iono or Rock Sand otherwise. So I didn't need that energy for game if I had Dynamotor. Thankfully, didn't get punished at that. Like I would have got punished for forgetting to Dynamotor on my second last turn of the game. And if I didn't win on that last turn of me attacking, then Julian absolutely wins on the following turn, with the Delphox V, because he was playing Arceus Firebox. I totally kind of blanked out and didn't tell you guys what he was playing, but he was playing Arceus Firebox. And to make matters worse for Julian, he had to play his roommate for this event, playing the exact same 60 the match before me. So he's playing all the homies at the end of the tournament. I got very emotional and like a little teary at the end, because it's like, damn bro, like, you know, you're knocking out your homie, you're knocking out your friend out of day 2 contention. And that never feels good. Win or lose, like it was such a good game. Like even if I lost that game, it was a really good game. I was like, whew, oh my god, we clinched it. We're gonna get day 2. We're gonna be able to ID into day number 2 after that one. As long as we don't get down paired, right? Going into round 9, my record was 5 wins, 0 losses, and 3 ties. And when I saw my opponent and I saw that on the match slip or the pairings that he didn't have 18 match points as well, my heart dropped. I was like, damn, this sucks. I might be the only one who doesn't get to ID their way into top cuts, who was at 18 points. And sure enough, that was the case. I was the unlucky one. I was the chosen one to be the one who has to play it out, because my opponent, Kobe Kawasaki, who actually got to play on stream earlier that day and I believe won, he was at 17 match points. And if you ID, you get 1 point. So I offered the ID and he declined it, which I totally understand, because I would decline it as well if I was in his scenario. We had to play it out. For him to make it into day 2, he had to beat me to put himself at 20 match points. And I needed to either tie or win. And if I were to win against him, that would put me at a really great spot at 21 match points, probably put me, I believe, in the top 20 going into day 2. But unfortunately, that was not the case for your boy. I was very nervous. I was very excited to play this game. I sat down and my homie, my friend Paul, he's the only Paul I know. Paul sat down to my right. You guys know Paul from the Charlotte vlog. He was playing Charizard, and everybody to my right and onwards, they were all in their win-and-ins. So everybody that side of me, maximum stress, highest stress levels possible. And congrats to Paul. Paul did end up winning his win-and-in, and he actually went all the way and got 17th place, 1 placement short of top 16. Onto my left side of the table, everybody to my left was IDing their way in. And maybe super far left, maybe some of them were playing it out because they wanted to increase their chances of making it in the top cut because they already had their day 2 locked in. So everybody to my left was IDing in. And shout out to Rowan Stavenow. You guys know him, rank 1 in Canada at the time I'm filming this. He ID'd with Liam Halliburton right beside me. I got excited. I got so excited. And you wanna know why? My opponent went second. I went first, so that was kind of crappy. He got to go second. But my opponent started benching Ralts. And my eyes, I don't know if Rowan saw this, but my eyes started lighting up. I was like, oh my god, Ralts? Is this it? Like, I was so devastated from getting down paired to now I'm getting gifted my, I'm getting gifted my win-in essentially with Ralts, with Gardevoir. And so Kobe had Ralts, he benched another Ralts, and then he benched Zorua. And I was like, damn, not a good thing to see. I instantly knew it went from being very favored for me to now this is like a 80-20 matchup for me. This is, it went from yes to no. It was a roller coaster of an emotion experience that I just felt in that like 15-second time period. Well, to put it bluntly, I got cooked. Kobe beat me 2-0. So congratulations to Kobe Kawasaki. And I believe he got 18th place. Yeah, so he also got some money from this event. So congrats to Kobe and the Tabletop Village people as well. He had a tabletop hoodie too. Yeah, I felt really bad not being able to ID my way into day 2. But hey, somebody had to get unlucky, and that was my turn to get unlucky. We ended up getting 40 championship points, and it's also more points than what I got at Pittsburgh, even though I made day 2 in Pittsburgh, which is pretty funny. So our final record and placement for the main event tournament was 112 out of 985 players, with a record of 5-1-3, only losing 1 match. And so like reflecting upon this tournament, I was like, hey, I really need to maybe take it a little slower in some cases, especially when it's those super insane critical turns where I could Lumineon for Raihan for game. There's always a lesson that can be learned from all these major events, and that's what I try and take everything with like a grain of salt. Try and see like the silver lining in it all. But I want to give a huge shout out to Ciaran. Farah, one of the best players in Canada. He was rank 1 in Canada going into Worlds last year. Ciaran is actually the opponent I had to beat in top 8 cut in Toronto so I could win my first ever cup. And Ciaran played Felix in the very last match of the tournament, round 15, I believe. Felix Wong, you guys know Felix from the vlogs. He is the Miraidon Slayer. He won a cup where he had to beat me. I got down paired into him, so he couldn't ID his way into it. So he was forced to play it out. He beat me, and then he beat a Miraidon player in the finals, another Christian Numapig, to win that cup. They had a gentleman's agreement, and the gentleman's agreement is a very sacred thing in my opinion. It's a thing where if you don't honor your gentleman's agreement, I lose like all respect for you as a player. And there's a lot of players out there that don't honor the gentleman's agreement, which is very scummy. Why are you doing that? It's basically giving yourself an extra win condition when you don't deserve to have one if you weren't going to honor giving them the extra win condition in a case of a gentleman's agreement. People can do it based off of remaining prizes on the board. People can do it based off of board state. My homie Felix was playing Ciaran in the mirror match, and they made a gentleman's agreement because if they tie, neither of them are able to get into top 32. But if one of them wins, they will be guaranteed $1,000 for top 32. So in that scenario, I guess it's always the right thing, you know, to make a gentleman's agreement. So Felix and Ciaran played out their full match, and based off the board state, Ciaran won because he was in the better position board state wise. And of course, Felix is a very honorable player, and Felix honored the gentleman's agreement and conceded to Ciaran at the end to give him the win because of the gentleman's agreement. As we were waiting for prizing for Felix, we were just like hanging out by the line. Ciaran walks by, sees us waiting, and he just hands the booster box that he won, because top 32 gets $1,000 US and a booster box. Ciaran straight up goes up to Felix and says, "Felix, here, take this. Thank you," because Felix honored the gentleman's agreement. So I want to give a huge shout out to Ciaran for being really cool about, like, that was so cool. Ciaran didn't need to do that, but the fact that he did, I already respected him a lot. Now I have like bonus respect for Ciaran. So shout out to Ciaran, and shout out to all those players out there who do honor their gentleman's agreements. I would love if you guys hit that like button down below and comment Ampharos Gang if you made it to the end. You can click on screen right here to check out Rahul Reddy's video, his tournament recap. You can click here to check out Rowan's channel. You can click here to check out Ciaran's channel, and you can subscribe down here if you want to see my regional Vancouver vlog. Catch you guys in the next video. Peace.